Sorry, honey, I've taken a wonderful fiancé. Are you upset that I'm happy? Jealous. Haha. Why do those people who can only look down on others end up with such hideous faces? As if her once cute face was a lie, my sister's face in front of me looked distorted. She looks down on not just me, but my husband as well. My anger reached a peak and exceeded the limits of my patience. My name is Amy. I'm 27 and I work at a printing company. Though it's a printing company, I'm not operating heavy machinery. I'm in the design department. We design flyers and catalogs for various businesses, creating designs based on our clients' needs. Even though the demand for printed materials has decreased due to digitalization, designing is still a busy and rewarding job. I'm thankful that I have clients who request my services. When I get compliments like, "The flyer for the Christmas event was adorable and very well received," it genuinely makes me happy. This job could be called my life's work. I might stay single and focused on work for my whole life. One day, I was thinking about that. My father was hospitalized with appendicitis. The young doctor who greeted me with, "Hello, are you here to visit someone today?" When I went to see my father, that was David, who is now my boyfriend and recently became my fiancé. You never know where or when you'll encounter someone that can change your life. Even though I say nothing's more important than a job, I buy marriage information magazines as soon as the topic of marriage comes up. I guess I'm more excited about this than I thought. I flipped through magazines while having tea in the living room of the house. That's when it happened. A sudden snatch. My magazine was taken. Hey! What's this? A bridal magazine? Why are you looking at something like this? It's none of your business, Sarah. The person who abruptly took the magazine from me was my younger sister by 2 years, Sarah. You're thinking about marriage? You should look at yourself first. You should know your place. You're thinking about marriage when you don't even have a boyfriend. In contrast, I've never been without a boyfriend. Speaking of which, my current boyfriend is... And so, my sister began boasting about her boyfriend, without anyone asking. My sister has always been like this. Unlike my plain face, she's very cute. She's always been popular. Everyone around her spoils her. Besides our parents and me, everyone around my sister has always agreed with whatever she said. As a result, she began to think of herself as the center of the world. My younger sister, who grew up arrogant, began to look down on me at some point. "Don't come near me. I don't want your face reflecting off mine. Even if you study with that brain, you won't get good grades. Why don't you stop trying?" I got another confession from a guy. It's so tough being this popular. I'm sure you feel jealous. She would just go on and on like that. Even when our parents scolded her strictly, it was too late. Her personality remained the same, and her verbal abuse towards me never ceased. Growing up like that, my younger sister now calls me, "You bitch." Fed up with my sister's boasting about her boyfriends, I sighed and finally spoke up. "I do have a boyfriend. In fact, we're engaged. I'm looking at these bridal magazines because we're getting married soon." Upon hearing that, my sister stopped dead in her tracks. If she thinks she's seen it seriously, she'll see a grin and a sarcastic smile. "Oh, really? There's someone who actually likes you? I wonder what he sees in you." "He likes my cheerfulness and positivity." "That sounds like a lie. He probably treats you like a housekeeper." "I plan on continuing to work, so he understands I can't be the perfect housewife." Upon hearing that, my sister reacted with exaggerated surprise. "Wow! You're gonna keep working even after getting married? You poor thing! You must be marrying a poor man." Her words rubbed me the wrong way. It seems she just can't help but look down on me. Money is not a problem. He's a doctor, so his income is stable. It's just that I want to keep working. When I retaliated, my sister suddenly fell silent. I sighed and went back to my room. A doctor. I see. Without knowing that my sister was leaking a meaningless mutter. The first thing to do once you start discussing marriage is to introduce the fiancé to your parents. And so David came to my house. The mood changed dramatically the moment my sister showed up after David had finished greeting our parents. Oh, so this is your fiancé? He's quite handsome. Sarah, I thought you were going out. If my sister's fiancé is coming over, of course I'd cancel my plans. I had been relieved that my sister was not around, even if it was just by chance. I had a bad feeling about it. In the past, when we were still students, my sister stole my boyfriends, multiple times. Once we became adults, I stopped having boyfriends, and since my sister kept having new ones one after another, such incidents no longer occurred. My little sister's return made me feel uneasy, but as expected, my little sister has become an adult. I'd like to believe she wouldn't steal my fiancé. My sister acting all chummy with my fiancé. David, my fiancé, blushing. Perhaps only in my imagination. My worst fear. Can we pretend this whole marriage thing didn't happen? I've decided to break up with you and start dating Sarah. Came true. Right on target. I never thought that even if I got old, my sister would steal my boyfriend. Sorry, I stole your fiancé. But it couldn't be helped after all. David found me cuter and more charming. He proposed so passionately. Oh, it's a sin to be cute. My sister, who was not apologizing at all, and was arrogantly looking down on me. Next to her, David, who was my former fiancé, also said while laughing, "Really? I had no idea you had such a cute sister. If I knew, I wouldn't have engaged with you. It's good that we broke up before the marriage." The moment I saw his distorted smile, all my feelings for him vanished without a trace. All that was left was a feeling of disgust. I'm also glad I didn't marry you. A man who can go to another woman so easily. I'll gift him to you, with my best regards. Sounds like you were sorely defeated. Exactly. You're not cute till the end. I wasn't being a sore loser. I genuinely felt this way. Apparently, the two of them in their fantasy world didn't get it. Interacting with you guys is a waste of time. Goodbye. She's such a sore loser. We're the ones who were wasting time. We're never gonna meet again. Bye. Until the end, they looked down on me and left. After that, we never met because our furious parents banned them, but I only heard that they got married. But it doesn't matter anymore. 3 years have passed since I separated from my sister and her husband, and I, now 30, am still working hard as ever. During this time, one of my clients liked my work and started requesting for me repeatedly. His name was Charles. As I talked to Charles through work, somehow he asked me out for dinner. Next, he asked me out for a date. During one of our dates, he proposed to me. To be honest, I was very happy. Charles is a very sincere person. I thought he wouldn't do anything like my ex. But, apparently, the incident with my sister had left quite a trauma in me. No way, but I couldn't help but wonder. That's why I told him honestly, about my sister, about my ex-fiancé. I showed him my sister's photo, gouging his reaction. But his expression didn't change when he saw my sister's picture. He looked away indifferently from the photo and gave me a gentle smile. I hate to say this, but I used to be pretty popular. I've met more cute and beautiful women than your sister. But for some reason, I didn't fall in love at all. I thought I'd be single for the rest of my life without dating anyone. But I was wrong. What do you mean? I think I have a good eye for people because of my job. No matter how beautiful or well-dressed a person is, they can't beat inner beauty. That's when I realized when I met you, Amy. What do you mean? I thought you shone very brightly. Eh? When we were talking about work, I thought that Amy was so bright and beautiful. You smiled happily. I could tell that you were really enjoying your time with me. I could really feel that you were really enjoying life. I thought you were dazzlingly beautiful. What? What? Hold on. This is super embarrassing. Despite my flustered reaction, Charles continued. Amy, you are beautiful. More beautiful and charming than anyone else. I have never met a woman as wonderful as you. I would like us to date with the intention of marriage. Truly, I really think of you as— Stop! No more. It's too embarrassing. I was blushing hard, but Charles's words didn't stop. He continued to compliment me, even after I accepted to date him. Gosh, it's too embarrassing. Charles and I got married, and we happily became a couple. Our married life has been smooth, and I feel like we've grown even closer than we were before the wedding. We share the household chores, doing them whenever we can. Since my husband lived alone for a long time, he might even be better at household chores than me. His cooking is the best, especially when I'm tired. On our days off, we often go out together. One such day off, we went to look at furniture as Charles had mentioned wanting to see some. And it was then that I ran into the devil from my nightmares. Oh my, I thought I spotted a plain-looking woman, but it's you. I heard a voice behind me as I was looking at the bedding section. I didn't have to look to know who it was. Even though 4 years had passed since we last saw each other, she was unforgettable. Sarah! It was my younger sister. Next to her was my ex-fiancé, David. Sarah's face seemed to have hardened since the last time I saw her. Whether it's because of her age or her personality becoming more pronounced, I couldn't tell. David, standing beside her, was also smirking, but he seemed to have lost weight. What brings you here? Nothing much, just looking at furniture. This place has a lot of expensive imported stuff. It's not really for people like you. Her condescending attitude was as annoying as ever. David nodded in agreement. Yeah, exactly. If someone like you comes here, it'll bring down the reputation of the shop. We don't want to be mistaken for being poor. You better leave. I was annoyed by the clattering words, but it's a waste of time to deal with them, so I chose to remain silent. However, my attitude seemed to displease them, and the voices of my sister and her husband grew louder and louder. Ugh, this is terrible! A luxury store is ruined like this. Why does such a poor person even come in here? They surely can't afford anything. Yeah, the poor should just leave. As this went on, other customers and the store staff started to glance at us curiously. Exasperated, I grabbed my husband's hand, intending to leave, but he didn't move. At that moment, my sister and her husband finally noticed my husband. Hey, who are you to her? I'm Amy's husband. My sister's eyes widened in surprise. What? You married this plain girl? Really? You're brave. Did you need a maid? That's hilarious. I help with the household chores. It's normal since we both work. Oh, both working. Poor thing. You're so poor that your wife has to work too? How pitiful. Unlike you, I'm living comfortably as a stay-at-home wife. We dine out more than half the week. Since we have money, we hire housekeeping services. Sorry for being winners. My sister, who seems to be disgusted and extends the ending of her sentences in an irritating way. My frustration is growing. My sister smirked at me. Sorry for taking such a wonderful fiancé. Thanks to me, you have to keep working even after marriage and live a poor life. And with such a dull man as your partner, you two plain folks are a match. Are you envious seeing me so happy? You must be jealous, right? Haha. It's just like you to marry a man who can't even support his wife. Keep suffering for the rest of your life, losers. I had reached my limit. I could stand her insulting me, but I couldn't bear her speaking ill of my husband. Listen here, you better stop. Amy, it's okay. Just as I was about to shout back, my husband stepped in front of me. Nice to meet you. I'm Charles, your sister's husband. Even your name is lame. Well, thank you. Since we've met, please accept my business card. As David took the business card my husband offered, he looked at my sister. You say such rather harsh things about Amy. That's because it's true. I can say an ugly woman is ugly. That's my law. There's no such law. And to me, you're much uglier. What? Shall we say the ugliness of your character? You seem confident about your appearance, but aren't you aware that your distorted personality, which only looks down on others, is showing? Despite his polite manner of speaking, his words were sharp. My sister's face gradually turned bright red. Don't joke with me! What's ugly about me? Everything. A beautiful person wouldn't be jealous of their sister and steal her fiancé. Huh? When have I ever been jealous of my sister? People tend to get close to and want to surpass those they admire. Isn't Amy such an existence for you? No, there's no way that's true. I was surprised. It was not just my husband's words, but also the way my sister reacted to them. I had never thought about it in that way. She always looked down on me. However, seeing her shaken, I started to wonder. One should simply ignore those who don't matter, those who are irrelevant. No matter who you bring along, she won't try to take him from you. After all, she didn't find him herself. Taking someone else's man implies jealousy, the resentment of someone else getting something that she couldn't have, no matter how hard she tried. So, I'm not jealous? Do you want to reassure yourself of your superiority by taking away? So, you're lacking self-confidence. A confident person wouldn't do such a thing and could live with their heads held high. No, that's not... My sister desperately tried to refute my husband's words, but her voice steadily weakened. Hey, you son of a bitch! David suddenly broke the silence, raising his voice. With a pale face, he kept switching his gaze between the business card and my husband, shaking my sister's shoulders. What on earth? What's going on? This name! I thought I'd seen it before, so I looked it up. And when I did... Huh? Charles Taylor? So what about it? It's the name of the hospital where I work. Huh? A hospital? Let's see. It's Taylor Medical Association. Wait. He's Dr. Taylor's son, the director and the head of the hospital. What? Are you sure? It's such a common last name. It could be someone else, right? I've seen him at the hospital with the director a few times. I'm sure it's him. I didn't recognize him because I only saw him from a distance. I knew I'd seen him somewhere. If he's the son, he must be a doctor, right? But the company name on this card. The company name. Oh! Not every son of a doctor has to be a doctor. And this company. It's a super famous pharmaceutical company. I heard the founder was elderly, and it's been handed over to his grandson. That would be me. It was my husband who lowered his head to the two people who were in upset. What? What did you just say? I'm... Seeing my sister unable to articulate her thoughts and David about to sit up, my husband quietly announced to the two of them, who had turned pale. I met my wife through my previous job before I took over my grandfather's business. I had heard about your story from her. It's far worse than I imagined. My husband shifted his gaze from my flustered sister to David. A job that helps people requires empathy, yet you look down and mock people instead. Who would want to be saved by such a doctor? That's a misunderstanding. David tried to explain with a pale face, but my husband, his eyes glaring, cut him off. No excuses. I'll let my father know about you. Wait for your fate. No! No! David collapsed, head bowed. My sister still stood in shock. Turning our backs to them, we left the scene. I had a feeling I would never see the two of them again. With that thought in my heart, I walked on without looking back. So what happened afterwards? David, my sister's husband, while not fired, had a significant pay cut and was removed from any responsible role. His arrogant behavior towards others had become habitual, and it seemed he was even cold towards patients. Naturally, he drew icy glares from everyone around him. It seems that there is space for him, and eventually he quit to run away. Gossip spread quickly within the hospital community, and it seems he is struggling to find a new job and is leading a tough life without work. And how about my sister? It was discovered that my sister was originally a rough spender, and no matter how high her husband's salary was, their life was pretty tough. So that's why David had lost weight. It wasn't just weight loss, he was emaciated. Once David was hit with a pay cut, my sister quickly gave up on him and seems to have divorced him. If David is no good, then she can just find the next man. She seemed to think that way, but reality was different. Both my husband and I thought, when we met her again, my sister, who used to be cute when she was young, had become quite harsh-looking. It might be that her true character is finally showing. Due to that, her popularity with men had come to an end. Nobody wants to date me! My parents called me to tell me that she had come crying to my parents' house. According to my sister, I'm so cute! Why doesn't anyone lavish attention on me? And even went as far as saying, she snagged a good man, I have to be better than her. By she probably meant me. I wonder if it's her country's law that she has to go above me. Perhaps my sister actually looked up to me. My husband said so, and maybe that could be true. But that doesn't mean I can forgive her behavior. In the end, my sister was turned away by her parents, saying she had made her own bed and needed to lie in it. She vanished into the nightlife. I haven't heard from her since. I probably won't hear my sister's name mentioned again. On the other hand, having been freed from the curse of my sister and her husband, I was enjoying peaceful days. A calm married life. A job that I'm passionate about. It's a fulfilling time. And soon, we'll be a family of 3. As I stared at the computer monitor, I gently stroked my growing belly.
Can you loan me $10? Huh? $10? I couldn't grasp what he was saying, but I let David into the house anyway. It was hard to see in the dark, but not only were David's clothes wet, they were also very worn and tattered. His jacket was stained and dirty all over, and his pants were torn as if caught on something. Simply put, his clothes were in shambles. When I took off his wet socks, the color, which was originally white, had turned brown. Seeing my grandson, David, in such a state, so different from how Tom and Emma were dressed during the day, made my heart heavy. However, I didn't show it. "Aren't you hungry?" and asked. David shook his head silently. "I just want to borrow $10. And said, "I'll give you the money." "Is it for allowance?" "But why did you come all this way in the rain?" "Please. I want to go home quickly." "Huh? You came all this way just to borrow $10? It takes about 3 hours to get here from Tom's house." My husband silently stood up, checked the locks on several windows, and simply said, "Let's go." Sat down near David and gently stroked his head. Then, tears that David had been holding back started to overflow. "My name is Kate. I'm only 52, but having 2 grandchildren is a small source of pride for me. I married a farmer from the South when I was 22, introduced by relatives, and quickly married. Knowing nothing about farming initially, I became a respectable farmer's wife, despite the trouble I caused my in-laws. My husband, the eldest son of a farmer, was very quiet and serious, so most of our conversations were about farming. Even when meeting our son Tom for the first time, my husband barely showed emotion and returned to his farm work after only a slight smile. I fondly remember those times, but I can't forget the sad expression on my husband's face I saw for the first time. It was when we received news that our daughter-in-law had passed away after a short illness. At the beginning of the busy fall season for farmers. While my husband was checking the condition of the parched ground, I said in a choked voice, "Tom called, she's gone." Whether he didn't hear me or chose not to respond, he continued to silently gaze somewhere. Tom called. His wife passed away. I repeated. Without turning towards me, he continued to staring. I wonder how Tom is feeling now. As I grimaced with a heart-wrenching pain, my husband came over, patted my back, and looked up at the sky. His expression was incredibly calm and sad. Behind my husband, who looked sorrowfully, the cornfield shone brilliantly in the autumn sun. Maybe the cornfield appeared to sparkle because my eyes were filled with tears. I am a terrible person. Not because I am crying for my son's wife who suffered and died from illness, but because I am crying for my son and grandchildren who have lost a loved one and are in despair. I kept apologizing in my heart, saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. After a while, Tom came to our house. He asked us to take care of his children, David and Sarah, for a while. After his wife's funeral, Tom seemed to be working very hard, stoically. The grandchildren started attending school from our house. Once, I asked Tom why he didn't live with his children, and he replied, "It brings back memories," with a truly pained expression. Memories? Of what? When I'm with David and Sarah. I remember the times we all lived together as a family. It's too painful. So what? The kids are suffering without their mom, and if you, their dad, don't support them, who will? I know. I understand, but... Watching Tom struggle to speak, I couldn't bring myself to blame him further. I understood that we were making the grandchildren feel lonely, but I couldn't simply tell Tom to cheer up. Believing that time would solve everything, we did our best to love and care for the grandchildren. Years passed, and Tom brought a woman named Emma to our house. Emma was about 12 years younger than Tom, and unlike his late wife's large, round eyes, Emma had slender eyes. While the children were drawing in another room, Tom started to speak formally. I'd like to introduce you. This is Emma. Emma finished with a simple greeting of nice to meet you. Tom reported to us in a matter-of-fact tone that he intended to marry her. My husband didn't say anything, so I said, "Good luck." And smiling at Emma, she quietly nodded and smiled back. I thought to myself how nice it was that Emma seemed like a quiet, good person. But as the grandchildren showed Tom their drawings in the next room, hoping for his praise, I noticed Emma's expression darken slightly and a soft sigh escape her. A slight doubt crept into my heart, yet Tom seemed unbothered, happily looking at the children's drawings. It's true, suddenly becoming a mother to two, she probably doesn't know what kind of expression to wear yet. I reassured myself and celebrated Tom and Emma's marriage. With the marriage, the grandchildren moved back to Tom's house, and my husband and I returned to our usual peaceful days. When David entered middle school, my husband and I visited Tom's house. But there was a certain coldness from everyone, including Tom, when we handed over our congratulatory gift. David, perhaps because he was in his teenage years, was not very talkative and seemed more gloomy, possibly due to his bangs covering his eyes. Congratulations on starting middle school, David. Have you decided on a club to join yet? Not yet. I see. You've always been fast on your feet since you were little. Maybe track and field would be good for you. Is this attitude typical of boys his age? David seemed sleepy as he listened to me, his eyelids nearly drooping. I casually thought I had seen the clothes David was wearing a few years back. Considering how quickly children grow at this age, the fact that he could still wear clothes from years ago seemed like his development might be a bit delayed. So after much thought, even if it was meddling, we decided to frequently bring vegetables to Tom's house, thinking it was the least we could do as farmers. We also delivered seasonal fruits from our farm, but one day when Tom received the fruits from me, "We appreciate it, but could you not come by the house for a while?" he said. It was lonely, but believing that my son and grandchildren were overcoming the absence of their wife and mother and cherishing their new life as a family, I left with a smile, pretending to be an understanding grandmother. After the harvest season passed and spring came again for planting. On one of those days when we feel the cycle of the seasons on our skin, we, also growing a small amount of organic vegetables alongside farming and delivering them to contracted restaurants, happened to see Tom and Emma while making a delivery. The restaurant in the city center had been renovated with trendy menus and decor, offering luxurious desserts and homemade specialty dishes. In the elegant atmosphere, people seemed to enjoy delicious meals, and at one of the tables, Tom and Emma were laughing and facing each other. After finishing the delivery and checking the invoice, I went back to the truck where my husband was waiting and told him about seeing Tom and them. While checking the invoice, "Why don't you call them?" my husband said in a low voice. "Hello? What's up, Mom? I'm kind of busy right now." Tom's voice through the phone sounded unmistakably annoyed, asking what I wanted. Stammering, I said while looking, "Sorry to bother you. Just wondering how you're doing," at my husband sitting next to me in the truck. After a few seconds of silence and a contemplative atmosphere on the other side of the phone, Tom said, "We're doing fine." "All right, then. That's good." I hung up, and my husband started the truck's engine. I don't think they're doing anything wrong. We're farmers, so we're basically always busy and never have the chance to go to a restaurant during the day like that. When Tom was young, we always went out as a family. I'm not trying to impose my values on my son, but everything Tom and Emma were wearing seemed very high-end. Far from what you'd expect of active parents raising 2 children. But I suppose that's also imposing my values, I thought. Soon after, it started pouring rain at night. My husband was restless, watching the rain outside through the small window in the living room. While we're grateful for the rain, too much in a short period can turn the fields into mud. When it was completely dark outside, the doorbell rang. Wondering who it could be at this hour and in such rain, I opened the door to find David standing there. Holding a small umbrella, David, small and short for a 13-year-old boy, reached out his hand. "Can you loan me $10? "Huh? $10? I couldn't grasp what he was saying, but let David into the house anyway. It was hard to see in the dark, but David's clothes were not only wet but also very worn and damaged. His jacket was stained and dirty all over, and his pants had tears as if they were caught on something. Simply put, his clothes were in shambles. After removing his wet socks, the originally white color had turned brown. Seeing my grandson, David, in such a state, so different from the well-dressed appearances of Tom and Emma I saw during the day, made my heart heavy, but I didn't let it show on my face and asked, "Aren't you hungry?" David shook his head silently. "I just want to borrow $10. And said, "I'll give you the money." "Is it for your allowance?" "But why did you walk all this way in the rain?" "Please, I just want to get home quickly." "Huh? You came all this way just to borrow $10? Walking here from Tom's house would take about 3 hours. Puzzled, I helped David out of his wet clothes, except for his underwear, and wrapped him in a large bath towel. As I dried him off, David looked away from me with an awkward expression. My husband silently stood up, checked the locks on several windows, and simply said, "Let's go." Sat down near David, and gently stroked his head. Then, tears that David had been holding back began to overflow. Even as tears streamed down his face, David remained expressionless and said, "Sarah, she has a fever. It's 39 degrees. She looks really in pain. That's why I want to buy some cold medicine and get home quickly. Cold medicine? What are Dad and Mom doing? I asked David, but he didn't reply, just kept crying. My husband's face came into my view, and I caught my breath. It was a look of silent, desperate restraint, the likes of which I had never seen on my usually quiet and gentle husband. He quickly put on his jacket, paused as he reached for the truck keys, turned to David, and asked, "Do you want to come with us?" David nodded vigorously, so my husband draped his jacket over David's shoulders without a word. "I want to go too. I want to come along," I said, almost childishly, to which my husband gave a slight smile and agreed. We hurried to Tom's house. The bad weather made visibility poor, and the sound of the windshield wipers echoed inside the car. I felt crushed by a sense of unease and fear that something ominous was happening, yet I couldn't bring myself to ask David what had happened. I wondered how to reconcile the happy faces of Tom and Emma, seen dining at the restaurant during the day, with the expressionless face of David sitting beside me now, all under the same roof as a family. In the silent car, I was the only one trembling. I dreaded what awaited us. I had noticed Emma's coldness towards Tom's children, David and Sarah, on the day she first came with Tom. Yet I chose to interpret my slight unease in a way that suited me. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." It took about 40 minutes to reach Tom's house. The outside light was off, and no light or signs of life could be seen through the closed curtains. Thinking that Sarah might be suffering alone inside with a high fever made me anxious. As I struggled to fit the key David gave us into the lock without any light. Upon entering and rushing to Sarah's room, her face, barely visible under the pale light and peeking out from the blanket, seemed discolored, almost reddish-black. Immediately, my husband placed his hand on Sarah's forehead, looked at her, "Call an ambulance," and said. Actions from then on were swift. The ambulance arrived within minutes of our call, and we had already prepared Sarah to be moved. My husband, upon seeing the ambulance outside, carried a dazed Sarah out, handing her over to the paramedics efficiently. At the hospital, we learned from David that Sarah had been running a fever for about 5 days. Why did it get to this point? I began to ask David but swallowed the rest of my words. It wasn't fair to blame him. What could a middle school boy do about his sister's fever continuing for 5 days? Rather, he should be praised for seeking help from us alone. Imagining David walking desperately through the downpour and dark streets, I whispered, "I'm sorry," and hugged him. Sarah was suspected of having pneumonia and had to be hospitalized overnight. My husband borrowed my phone to call Tom himself. "Come now," simply stating. My husband then sat motionless in a chair, seemingly exhausted in the hospital's waiting room at midnight. David was quietly sleeping, wrapped in a borrowed blanket. After a while, Tom and Emma arrived at the hospital entrance by taxi, looking slightly drunk and weary as they walked towards us. "Mom, how's Sarah? Do you even understand what's happening with Sarah? Come on, calling an ambulance just because she has a fever? Isn't that a bit much?" Tom chuckled, seeking agreement from Emma next to him. Emma narrowed her eyes even more and made a troubled face while holding her elbow. "Hospitalized for a cold. Who do you think is going to pay for that? Emma, do you actually care about Sarah? I'm here because I'm concerned, aren't I? You two were out dining at a restaurant while your child had a fever." I raised my voice, to which Emma looked at me with a scoff. "Are parents not allowed to eat if their child has a fever? You took our daughter to the hospital without our consent and got her admitted. And now, because she might have pneumonia, you put her in a private room, and we have to pay the extra charge. That's fine, right? Just worry and leave everything else to us. Emma, contrary to her gentle appearance, glared at me with a rather domineering attitude. I was at a loss for words, feeling nauseous from the turmoil welling up inside me. Then, a large hand gently touched my back. My husband's hand. Feeling the warmth of his quiet, strong support, I took a deep breath. Tom. Huh? What's up? Tom flinched for a moment. At the same time, Emma stepped in front of Tom to confront my husband. But he completely ignored her and only spoke to Tom, looking past her. Are you happy? What kind of question is that out of the blue? Of course, I'm happy. Emma and I are getting along fine. Is that so? Do you think David and Sarah are happy? Tom remained silent, just staring at my husband, when David, who had been sleeping in the waiting room chair, woke up and looked at us expressionlessly. Then Emma rushed to David, pulled him by the arm towards Tom. Let's go home! And urged. Whether it's pneumonia or just a fever, resting at home will cure it. Let's get Sarah home quickly. It's a waste to keep her hospitalized. Yeah, well, that's true. Are you both out of your minds? She needs to rest until the fever goes down. That's what we were doing at home before you decided to drag her to the hospital. It's better for Sarah to rest at home than spend money on hospitalization. Before Emma could finish her argument, my husband pulled David away from her and hugged him, shaking his head slightly. You two, it's no use anymore. We can't entrust these kids to you. What are you talking about? David is our child. Mine and Tom's. Sarah's condition isn't just about pneumonia. The doctor said she's also suffering from severe malnutrition, and David, too, is far from normal. While holding David, my husband's words trailed off. This is ridiculous, Emma said, dismissively pushing Tom's back, suggesting they take Sarah and leave. I felt an urge to reach out and save Tom, who looked troubled, yet unable to go against Emma's wishes. Tom doesn't want to lose what he's found in Emma after overcoming the grief of losing his beloved wife. So, he probably can't oppose Emma. What can I do for Tom, who's about to make a wrong turn? Maybe Tom is being deceived by a bad woman like Emma. But Tom, as a parent and a person, if he can't protect his young children, David and Sarah, even knowing all this, I can't forgive him anymore. Tom. Almost unconsciously, I slapped Tom's cheek. I had never raised my hand to him since he was a child, and never thought the day would come when I would do so to my son, now grown so large. I was shocked by my own actions. Tom looked at me, stunned, wondering why he was slapped. The doctor said, given the current state of David and Sarah, it's a clear case of child neglect. There was even a suggestion to consult the police about you two. Police? Wait a minute. But I asked them to wait. I didn't want to ruin your lives over a suspicion. I choked up, unable to finish my sentence. Surely, what followed would be words that could shatter Tom's family relations. But the thought that David and Sarah might continue to suffer if I remained silent compelled me to speak. I intend to contact the police and take appropriate action. What are you talking about? Afterwards, Emma and I ended up yelling at each other in the hospital late at night, prompting the nurses, who appeared annoyed, to come and intervene between us. Contact the police? Take appropriate action? Do you seriously think doing that will make David and Sarah happy? Held back by the hospital staff, Emma shouted at me. I clenched my fists, trying to think of something to say back, but nothing came to mind. David remained expressionless, held by my husband. I don't know how to make this child happy. Can anyone prove that I even managed to make my own son, Tom, happy? Emma, do you actually intend to make David and Sarah happy? Think about happiness? Yes, happiness. No one knows whether they can make someone happy or not. But I think what's more important than wishing for their happiness is to think about it. We're adults. We should think about how David, who couldn't do anything by himself, who didn't call an ambulance despite his sister having a terrible fever, and just walked in the heavy rain to seek help, can grow up to be strong and wise. That's what I believe. That's just idealistic talk. It's not my child, after all. Emma muttered in a voice so low only I could hear, and noticing her lonely expression, I gasped. Emma and Tom, who demanded immediate discharge procedures, were met by a doctor who had preemptively contacted the police, leading to their being taken away by several officers. Emma protested, "I'll sue you for defamation." However, it turned out that there had been reports to child welfare services from neighbors suspecting abuse, and a meeting was set up a few days later with child welfare workers. I later learned that the fruits and vegetables we had been giving them were being sold online. And moreover, Tom and Emma had been demanding money from the deceased former wife's parents for David and Sarah's educational expenses, with a significant amount deposited in their account. But most of it was spent by Tom and Emma, leaving David and Sarah with hardly any proper meals. Is it someone else's place to dictate how much and what a child should eat? During the discussion with child welfare workers, Emma's attitude gradually became indifferent as the staff explained the situation, suggesting moving the children to a facility. Tom started to panic and defend himself. It's not like that. Sure, I might not have paid enough attention, but David and Sarah are my children too. It can't be a facility. But considering the current situation, as the worker elaborated, my husband stood up. But those kids are my kids, and addressed Tom and Emma. You two should stop being parents. We will take care of the children. Though it was a brief statement from my always quiet and calm husband, Tom and Emma were silenced by his determination and resolution, hanging their heads in defeat. Tom looked up at me, seeking help. Mom. I was deceived by Emma. You might have been a terrible parent, but speaking more will only make you a worse man, Tom. Tom sighed softly without responding. Though Tom and Emma did not divorce, the rumor that they were investigated by the police for child neglect made their life uncomfortable. David and Sarah came to live with us. It turned out they were distant because Emma had lied to them, saying we disliked the grandchildren. But as the misunderstanding cleared, their smiles became more frequent. In the crisp autumn breeze under a clear sky, I took a deep breath, looking over the golden cornfields. The harsh summer had passed, and it was now the season of harvest. In the evening, countless dragonflies flew, their wings reflecting the sunset. In this magical scenery, I could see David and Sarah's figures from behind. It's time to go home. When I called out to them, they ran towards me with big smiles. Hey, what's for dinner tonight? Let's see. How about some grilled salmon? The first time I ate vegetable at Grandma's house, I thought it was incredibly delicious. I wonder why. Now, I feel it's even more delicious. I get it. It's seriously good. I can eat at them in a second. Sarah laughed. That's an exaggeration. Impossible. As David made a humorous face. With each gentle breeze, the cornfields waved, and my husband's car came to pick us up from the other side of this scenic view. Let's go home. David and Sarah nodded with smiles, so bright I couldn't help but shed tears.